Okay, to start off with, you're gonna need your two plates with their carved design, some Q-tips, cotton balls, gloves. You're gonna need your ink, sponge brushes, a ruler, some shop towels, and watercolor paper. Okay, for your registration, you're gonna need watercolor paper, duct tape, your plate, a pencil, and a ruler. Okay, for your registration, the first thing you're going to want to do is have a piece of butcher paper down in your press. And you're going to tape this down to your press so that it doesn't move or slide on you. So once you have taped all the corners of your butcher paper onto the press, you're going to grab your plexiglass and you're going to put it down on the middle and you're just going to trace it out into your butcher paper. I do recommend a pen or a marker rather than a pencil because it would show up more. Once you're done tracing your plexiglass into the butcher paper, you're just gonna start building the border around it. So you're just gonna measure whatever your border size is and then just create it and trace it. I'm doing it right here with a ruler. I believe my border was 1.5 inches, which is not the typical. The typical is 1 inch, but it all depends on what you want for your design. This is how your registration should look like in the end. Okay, so for the press, the first thing you want to do is roll everything to the bottom so that you can see how much pressure you need to add as you test it with your plexiglass. And I am gonna have to apologize just because my hair is like in half of this like section of the video and you can't really see what I'm doing, but as you can see, I'm rolling everything down so that I can start measuring how much pressure I would have to put on my plexiglass. And honestly, when setting up a press, it's all about just messing around with it and trying to figure it out, because every plexiglass is a different size and needs a different pressure, or whatever type of material you're using. There's not an exact measurement for it. You just have to like mess around with it and try to figure out how much pressure you need. Last thing I'm gonna mention, I wasn't able to get a video of it, but you do want to do test runs and see if the pressure is correct. And if the pressure is correct, it should look something like this, where you can see the pressure all along your watercolor paper. Okay, now we're gonna start the inking process of this all. Honestly, it's my favorite part. It's the most therapeutic. So I'm just gonna put gloves on because it does get really messy, especially with the ink, because it's oil-based ink, so it gets everywhere. It's also really hard to take off. If you just want to do it with soap and water, it's just not gonna happen. So the first thing I'm gonna do is get my blue ink for my first plate, and I'm just gonna mix it up first to get the oil to mix with the paint, and then I'm gonna get my sponge brush and I'm just gonna dab that into all my little carvings and all the little crevices of the plexiglass. I've found that this is the technique that works for me. I do know that some people use a scraper, some other people use a brush as well. Honestly, it's whatever works for you. So once you're done putting all the ink into your plexiglass carving, you're just going to take the shop towel and just scrub away ink, so that your design becomes more visible. Another thing that you can use instead of the towels is cheesecloth. Honestly, it's just a matter of preference. Both of them work really well. I will say though, I do like the towels better. And I'm just going to use that same towel to clean off the back of my plexiglass and the edges of the plexiglass. I just want to keep everything very clean. And now I'm just going to use the Q-tips to add highlight, so to remove more ink from spots where I want more of the white of the paper to show. And I'm going to do the same exact thing with the cotton balls. I'm just going to use it to clean it off, to clean off the plate, excuse me. I just want to make sure that everything's very clean, so I'm going to use the towel and the cotton balls just to clean the back of the plate, the sides, and just keep everything very clean for when it's time to actually do the printing. So once I'm done with my first plate and my first color, I'm just going to put it aside, and I'm going to start off with my second color, which is black. So I'm going to do the same thing I did for the first one, and I'm just going to start off by mixing up my ink so that I can really mix up that oil and that color together. And we're practically going to do the same thing we did with the first one. So we're going to mainly just, with the second brush sponge that we have, we're just going to dab the ink into my second plate, and we're going to use the cotton balls and the Q-tips to add highlights and emphasize whatever we want of our design. So once you're done with inking and removing all the excess ink from your design, you're just going to use that same paper towel and your cotton balls just to remove any excess ink that's surrounding your design, or in the edges of the plexiglass, and even on the back of your plexiglass, just so that everything can stay clean, especially when printing on the press. So before you even start printing, the first thing you're going to do is get your watercolor paper and just spray it with water. After spraying it, you do want to just smudge the water all over. Okay, to start printing, the first thing you want to do is grab your first plexiglass. It doesn't really matter which one you do first. Honestly, it's up to you. And I'm just going to make sure that it's really clean. Again, use the towels to just clean all the edges and corners of the plexiglass. And I'm going to place it down into the registration that we had already previously made on our press in the butcher paper. And then after doing that, I'm just going to grab the watercolor paper that we sprayed with water, and I'm going to put it on top, making sure that I follow again my registration, just so that everything has a nice border. As you can see, I'm being very careful in placing down my watercolor paper, and this is because I just want the registration to be correct. I'm also using little paper tabs to keep everything clean. Just because the ink can get anywhere, you'll be surprised. After this, I'm just going to add an extra piece of butcher paper on top, again just to keep everything clean. After that, we're going to use two mats. The first one is a thin, bigger one, and after this one we're going to add a thicker one, as you can see, and I'm just going to gently place them on top just because I don't want to move my registration. After doing this, I'm going to put my lever down, and I'm going to start rolling my design into the press, and we're going to do one roll and then we're going to roll it back. Once you roll it back, you're gonna gently remove the two mats that you have placed on top. Again, you just don't want to move anything and get it dirty. You're also going to remove your butcher paper, and using the paper tabs that I have mentioned previously, we're gonna, oh, I'm sorry, I just didn't realize that it moved, but it's okay. We're gonna gently pick it up, and that would be the first color of and the first plate of our composition. After this, you're just gonna set your first plate aside. You don't really need it right now. You're done with that. And you're gonna get your second plexiglass. Again, you're gonna do the same thing as the first one. You're gonna clean it off, all the edges and corners as well as you can, just because again, you don't wanna things to get dirty, especially with this ink. It just happens more often. And you're gonna place it down into your registration that you have already made. Again, make sure to try to follow the outline as best as you can. And after doing so, you're going to place down your paper as well. Again, trying to follow your registration just to keep everything well and organized. Again, remember to use your little paper tabs. They do wonders. Like, genuinely, they keep your work very clean. So again, just try not to get it dirty, especially after working so hard. You don't just want to find a little fingerprint of ink in one of your prints. Once you're done with the registration, you're going to grab another butcher paper, put it on top of this, again keeping everything clean. You're going to add your first mat, again the thin one, and then the thicker mat. Remember to put your lever up, and then you're going to put it down, roll it again. You're going to roll it once and then roll it back, and that should give you your final print.